center. I've also been on the academic side and on the student life side in years past. But we have last offered this class in 2022. And I think our first offering, Randa, was in 2019. Okay. And in 2019, I was at least a young 48-year-old. Well, I'm not in my 40s anymore. So what I would had said at that point in time is going to be a little bit different from what I would say today as a 54-year-old. And I'll speak to you as Suzanne, the person that you see on the screen, but I'll also speak to you as Suzanne, the dietitian, that if you were to come meet with me in clinic, the things that I would ask you and that I would ask you to consider. This is a topic that is so personal to me because in late 2014, early 2015, I found myself all of a sudden going through things that I couldn't understand, I couldn't explain. And I'll share a good bit of my personal story. I hope you get some laughs because you kind of have to laugh at this stage of life. Okay. And then if you're somebody who's a little bit younger and you're kind of looking as to what might be coming, please know that every woman's journey is different. Just as puberty was different when we were, so much younger. And for those of you who are mothers, your pregnancy experience, your breastfeeding experience, if you chose to do that, was different. And so I'll share a little bit about my story, actually a good bit about it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I may be a bit graphic at times, but please know that's not for shock value. It's more just to say, here's what could happen. And again, if you were my patient, I would discuss some of these things with you. And I did put this image up so you could see who I was as a person, but also that there is light coming at the end of the tunnel. And sometimes it helps to remember that as you go through this process. Okay, next slide. Okay, just to get started, I do not receive any of the products that I mentioned, the companies, the services that I mentioned. I don't receive any financial benefit. I don't receive any products. I'm not an influencer. And so therefore don't, have affiliate marketing connections. So everything I'm telling you today is either something I personally have used or a friend has used. And we've discussed it at length because in my friend group, this is a topic that we spend a lot of time on. Next slide. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about timelines. When does everything happen? And that, again, that will vary from woman to woman. But just as a general rule, what are the terms and the timelines that we're talking about? We'll take a look at symptoms. It's not just hot flashes and night sweats. There's many other symptoms that you may experience. What I'm sharing with you are some that I experienced and was completely caught off guard. But I'll give you some solutions to kind of deal with those. And so we'll look at where to start and then again, strategies for success, because and this is one of my favorite quotes. I did not include it on a slide, but it's actually from Alice in Wonderland. And it says, "It's no use going back to yesterday because I was a different person then." And I think that's so important to remember is that as you progress through every stage of life, we have to remember I'm not that person I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so my expectations of myself have to be different. And particularly as we go through this stage, we have to learn to give ourselves some grace. Okay. And then I'll share some resources with you, some local resources, and then some products that I personally like, again, or friends like, and then also some areas on social media that you can look to for some of the best information out there. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this photo, I have to laugh at this today. This is late 2014, early 2015. This is my bedside table, okay? And at this point, you can see I have thrown everything at trying to manage perimenopause symptoms possible, okay? So here I have a cool air diffuser. I even threw essential oils at it, and I threw in a salt lamp just for good measure. But I was looking for any resolution to what I was experiencing. In late 2014, early 2015, I started noticing I was getting really hot at night to the point, and you may have experienced this, the sheets are soaked, nightgown or sleep shirt, whatever is soaked. The hot flashes. I well remember standing in front of an undergraduate class I was teaching, and all of a sudden I just feel heat coming up. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I pass out in front of these 18 to 20, 21-year olds, it's going to be awful. And the thing that really made me start looking for solutions that I didn't expect. I mean, as I said earlier, I had heard about night sweats, I'd heard about hot flashes, but I started experiencing GI symptoms to the point where I was like, I had always had this wonderful GI system. Everything was regular. I mean, I'm a dietitian. I do things the right way, right? And then all of a sudden, I just was having bouts of diarrhea that came out of nowhere, to the point I called my primary care physician at the time, called her office and said, I think I have C. diff. I need to be referred to a GI specialist. And the nurses were like, we're sure you don't have C. diff. And as it came to pass, what I would learn and how I work with women today is, I actually had a patient just yesterday. When you do see GI symptoms, well, you've got hormonal changes going on in the body. Hormones affect the GI system. And so diarrhea, constipation, both can be a result. But I'm going to give you some resources to track what's going on, because what I also began to piece together for myself at this time is that not just your hormones, but stressors impact the GI system. And I currently use, and I've got it listed in resources, use with my patients, an app called Care, Cara like CARA, Care. It's a teal colored app. There are others out there. It's just one that I've used with my patients, and it allows you to track food and beverage intake, your stool habits, and stressors, emotions. And it's really interesting when people begin to track this, even for a short period of time, and they begin to see uh, patterns in what's happening. For me at this time in late 2014, early 2015, I had gone to work for a company, long running company, well established. And due to changes in the laboratory industry in that time frame, the company declared bankruptcy at the end of 2014. So I had gone to work for a company that day to day, I did not know if I was going to have a job. Okay. And so there was significant stress because I'm single. It's a one income household. It's all me. And so I had that stress on top of what was beginning to happen physically to me. And so I think all of that compounded is kind of where some of this was coming from. Miranda, next slide. Okay. So what are the timelines? You hear the term menopause, but really, um, if we back up from menopause, then we look at perimenopause. Okay. And those are the years leading up to menopause, which is when you've gone 12 months with no menstrual cycle. Okay. So perimenopause is when all of this begins to build, and you may notice how uncomfortable you are. Again, the all of a sudden soaking through sheets at night, the hot flashes, and you may notice some other things too, sleep disturbances, um, what I call brain fog or forgetfulness. All of this begins to occur because as we're going through perimenopause and even after menopause, which I'm postmenopausal now, um, it's still, there's not a resolution per se. It's more managing the symptoms and working with your physician to determine what is the best route for you to do that. And I'll briefly address that. So after you've hit that 1 year, that 12-month mark, you're now postmenopausal. And I told my physician the day that she said, okay, we're done. It's been 12 months. I really wanted to go out and buy myself a nice dinner because I'm like, okay, surely this is over. And what I've realized, because that was about 3 years ago, is that it's really not over. It's more, again, continuing to manage the symptoms as they develop, and kind of looking at how you lead your life so that you can better manage what's happening. Okay. So perimenopause can last anywhere from 2 to 8 years. with an average being around 4 years. For me, it was close to 6. And I did see a question in the chat, and I'll briefly address that. I would, that was actually looking at somebody who's had a hysterectomy. I would discuss that with your doctor to kind of see how they're gauging it. I know for me, I had came off any kind of contraceptive method, and then hormones were checked. But again, it's going to vary depending on whether you had a total hysterectomy or just the uterus removed. But definitely talk with your physician about that. And I've given you some resources that I'll point out. Next slide. Okay, so yes, hot flashes, but what also happens? And and I tell my patients when I meet with them that are around my age range that what I said as a 30-year-old in practice, I have paid for. When I was at UAB from age 30 to 35, I would have women about all of our age ranges, and they would say, "But what do I do about this?" And they would point to their belly. What happened? And as that 30-year-old who really did not know what she was talking about, I told them to exercise more. And I now know that is the worst advice you could give anyone, because what is actually happening is that as estrogen drops, you get a shift in body composition. Okay. So weight is moving more to the abdominal region. And we can do things to help offset that, but that's what happens is it's a body composition change. You see it in men too. It's just that we don't notice it as much or don't think about it as much. Um, you know, Men sometimes their belt, where they're wearing their belt, has to move over because they put weight on in their abdominal cavity as well, and that's due to a drop in testosterone. So you get a change in body composition, and we know that with aging, as we age, we begin to lose muscle mass. And even though your weight may stay the same, the composition of that weight is different. And I will remember sitting at my desk at in the Student Health Center in this time frame, 2014 to 15, and feeling like all of a sudden, what happened? Where did this belly come from? I never had this. And I had to laugh. I threw out all but one of my belts. So, which I kind of kept just as a reminder of years past. But you can do some things to help tone, and then we'll talk briefly just about, like, I'll tell you what I do in terms of hormone replacement, but that's a conversation to have with your doctor. I'm very clear that I'm not a gynecologist, not a physician, and that's where I speak as me, the individual. Okay. Um, Other things that can happen, discussing this with a colleague recently, definitely a desire libido decreases. And that can be and that's for both women and men. The challenge with that is that it will affect a relationship, or can affect a relationship. What's also going on during this age range that we're in is that for those who work or are parents, you may be becoming empty nesters. And so having to reconnect with your partner, spouse, becomes so critical because you were so focused on being parents, and now that aspect of the relationship has changed. And so um, the decrease in libido, and then also with what's happening in the household, can certainly have an effect on a relationship. Other things, hair loss, and that's where, and I'll have a slide on this. You really need to be working with a physician to see what labs look like. For me, it was thyroid was just gone. It was done. And so all the hair loss that I was seeing in my shower, just like noticing the drain was getting clogged, was due to the fact that thyroid had, I needed Synthroid. I needed some help with that. Insomnia, there are effects of the hormonal changes on the ability to sleep. Also, and this is one thing I had to work on, friends have said they've had to really work on, is that the tendency when you're lying awake is to grab the phone. And the challenge with that is, if you're not using the nighttime screen where you're not getting that blue light, if you're not doing that, the blue light will interfere with melatonin production. And then also, the minute you click on an app, those are, as we know, are designed to keep you engaged. And so that witching hour of 1 o'clock in the morning all of a sudden becomes 3 o'clock in the morning. And then, you're like, I can't get back to sleep. So insomnia is part of it. And I'll address kind of some good bedroom practices to help with that. We mentioned night sweats, other things, heart palpitations. Tachycardia is the formal term, but yeah, you may notice heart racing. I've had some friends, and I had a couple myself, of really they were panic attacks that just came on. And then also headaches. And I'll get into that when I talk about nutrition to help offset the headaches that can develop. Next slide. Okay. Other things, and I do have a product for this. Body odor changes. You've got hormones changing. I mean, for those who are parents and when your children were teenagers, what did you notice? They were not as fresh, and you've got hormonal changes going on as well. It's just that some years down the road. So companies have addressed this, and there are now full body deodorants. And we do have one listed on a slide that can be used on all areas of the body. So, and that's important to look for. Frozen shoulder. I had heard patients talk about this. I'd heard friends talk about this. As recently as this week, I've been dealing with this. Frozen shoulder is when it's really kind of the ball in the shoulder. It gets thicker and tighter, and it's common with aging. Over age 40, you see it more often in women. And really, that's where, for me personally, I did some range of motion exercises yesterday trying to help it. I will be going to my longtime chiropractor on Monday to get some assistance. And I'm also working in, one of my priorities this summer are flexibility exercises, because you got to keep things moving. When I was teaching undergraduates full time, I would tell them, and I tell my patients today, your body is much like an automobile. Right off the lot, unless it's a lemon, it's going to run really well for a long time. But you put enough mileage on anything and it starts to break down. So a frozen shoulder, kind of like the brake pads on a car that need to be replaced, it's just common with wear and tear. And I have to laugh. I told a coworker this morning, I said, we have been on this planet more than half a century. So it's about time things started to need a little bit of a boost. Okay. Forgetfulness, brain fog. Yeah, I used to pride myself on being able to remember each one of my students' names. Now, hardly anybody wears a badge anymore, so I can't look for the badge to see a name. But I take a screenshot of everything. I need to pick up something at the grocery store. I take a screenshot of it. I put the empty container in my passenger seat to remind me on the way home, pick up, dryer sheets, whatever. So, kind of working through some of that forgetfulness with brain fog. I think changing the way you work helps. If I have tasks like doing charting, patient charts, I do better to do it in lump times or lumps of time, and just so that I'm focused on that. GI issues, as I mentioned, that was the one that really caught me off guard. And it's still even today. I laugh with patients, laughed with one yesterday. She was 53 years old, and she said, no one can figure out why I'm having these bouts of diarrhea and then constipation. She said, I've had a colonoscopy. I mean, I've been worked up for everything. I don't understand what's happening. And I said, well, tell me when it started. And she could pinpoint it was back to age 46 that she started having GI problems. And I said, well, you're 53 now, be 54 later this year. You and I share the same age. Don't rule out that those hormonal changes are affecting what's going on with your GI tract. You can again track what's happening using that app, CareCare, to see, is there a food, is there a beverage that may be the culprit? Are there stressors that could be the culprit? But from just a maintenance standpoint, if you feel the need to go to the bathroom, find a bathroom. Don't think you're going to wait till you get home because you may not make it. Okay. And also, if you wait, you may, instead of having an accident, you may actually develop constipation because you've waited. We see that in children. We just sometimes forget that as adults, we go through the same thing, okay, or don't realize it. For me, again, I didn't realize it, but now I know if I'm out in the grocery store, I'm not going to wait till I get home. I'm going to find a restroom. Okay. So just take that as a tip. As I said, I'm not being graphic for effect. It's just what happens. Okay. Another fun symptom or side effect, which also is tied into aging, is incontinence. Okay. I laugh and say that, and I've actually got pictures of a panty liner on a slide because, hey, we're not done with that all yet. Okay. Is that a laugh can lead to a leak. So be prepared. And also fresher is better. So, but yeah, those leaks, that's common. It's common. And then other things, dermatitis, your skin changes. I mean, if you think about what your problems were skin wise at age 13, 14, 15, you know, boy, the days of worrying about having oily skin are long since gone for me. Um, so now it's more conditions that have developed just even last year. I couldn't understand what was happening. I was having dryness and like kind of like the skin almost was cracking. And it was around the folds of the nose and the chin. It was just in that area. And I thought, I know I'm not dehydrated. I hydrate constantly. And but I couldn't understand what was happening. A good friend of mine is a long time esthetician. And she was like, I don't understand what's happening to your skin either. And as it turns out, after a trip to the dermatologist, she said it's perioral dermatitis. It's real common, and there are so many factors that can trigger it. It's hard to list them all. Now I just have a prescription for topical clindamycin, and I carry even when I travel, I carry it with me because I never know when it's going to hit. But it literally is just like just tightness and redness, and then ultimately the skin will crack. Exfoliating did nothing to help it. Okay. And then other things, and again, part of this is aging. It's called silent reflux, and I've given you the medical term for it. But with silent reflux, you may not feel heartburn, classic heartburn. Rather, it's happening like particularly at night when you're reclined in bed. You have acid coming up into the throat. For me, it was coming into the back of my mouth. And so I lost one tooth last year. And then earlier this year, I had major repairs done on some fillings because the acid had literally eroded. I do take an acid reducer daily, um, but it still happens. I've tried sleeping upright, and inevitably I roll over in my sleep. But I just have to try to manage it as much as possible. And my dentist watches for it as well. Next slide. Okay, so where do you start? Okay. Well, number one, and please hear this because I see particularly women all the time who've taken care of their families, they've taken care of their spouse, made sure that they got all their checkups, but they didn't take care of themselves. Okay, it's the classic put your oxygen mask on first. You have got to have a primary care physician. Acute care clinics are not primary care. You need a primary care physician that knows you, that knows if you know your health history, your family's health history, that they keep all that in mind as they're treating you, and that will watch for changes in lab work, and that goes into getting regular checkups. So those years and many times in our 20s when we didn't utilize the health insurance that we had, now is the time to utilize it. Okay, and so regular checkups, lab work. DEXA scans looking at bones because there are major skeletal issues that happen, as I mentioned, in this time frame. That is critical. And I was so fortunate that my physician, her office is very on top of the lab work, and they're looking at thyroid, looking at vitamin D, B12. And B12 is particularly important, not just with aging. We actually lose some ability to absorb B12 as we get older. But if you take an acid reducer like I do, that is also affecting your body's ability to get B12 out of animal foods. So my doctor is always looking at that and keeping it going. Um, I saw a question pop up. How do you get your physician to actually test? Keep asking the question. And if it's not a relationship, and I tell people this too when working with me, if I'm not providing you with what you need, or I'm not, we're not meeting eye to eye, I will refer you to somebody else. And I would say the same thing with a physician. Just keep asking. For me, I had a wonderful physician. I knew I was going to have to find somebody else because she was leaving the practice and going to an acute care clinic. But she even said to me, look, I know you're interested in looking at hormones. She said, I'm not, that's not something that I have studied, and I would refer you to someone anyway, even if she wasn't leaving that practice that I was in at the time. So keep asking the questions, talk to your friends, find out where people are going. And yes, yes, a lot of providers do change regularly. I saw that question pop up. So, but do find somebody to get started on this process, because, as I said, I had no idea that thyroid was an issue. It's not been an issue for anybody else in my family, and all of a sudden, it was like, oh, maybe this is part of the reason I'm so tired um, all the time. Um, and then, are you taking your medications regularly? That's one thing I ask patients when they see me professionally. I want to know about, yes, Dr. Day is fantastic. She's actually my physician. Um, are you taking medications as they're prescribed? A lot of times people don't really look at the bottle to see how they should be taking the medication. And if you're having a side effect or you're noticing something different, talk to your doctor about that. I have a strong family history of cardiac issues on my mother's side. So even at age 40, I began having blood pressure issues, really serious blood pressure issues. And one of the medications that was prescribed when I first discovered that is a medication called lisinopril. And what had happened, uh, my coworkers at the time noticed that I was coughing constantly, and it was to the point they asked me to close my door. Lisinopril, in some people, not everyone, it's a very common drug, but in some people, it can cause that cough. And and so that was one thing that we had to change in my medication regimen. Also, supplements. Please tell your doctor or ask a pharmacist about taking supplements. I do take myself personally vitamin D, fish oil, because I have to watch my triglycerides. Um, take those. I'm looking at other supplements. Miranda and I've discussed this, and Carolyn McVicker have discussed it. I'm looking at things that are kind of in this space right now. Creatine is something that's out there. I see a lot of younger people taking it, but I'm looking at that. But my question is always, what am I willing to commit to financially, and what am I willing to commit to time wise? Because, you know, I certainly, when I started this journey, I jumped on the bandwagon of several supplements and I didn't see any effect. And I'm like, maybe I could spend that money somewhere else. So, definitely consider what you're willing to commit to, both from your pocketbook and time wise. I will say, if you decide to start taking something, again, tell your doctor, because some supplements, routine supplements, can affect lab work. One of those is biotin. Okay, and a lot of people take biotin, um, for hair, nails, skin. I even have a patient in his 80s, a man who's taking it. And biotin can actually, it doesn't affect the thyroid, but it can interfere with thyroid labs so that they're not being, you can't read them correctly. So if you do take something like biotin, I take a supplement that has that in it, you want to stop at 72 hours before you have lab work done so that the thyroid can be read correctly. And then here are two sources that you can find a specialist, and then also information. Hormone therapy for the past 20 years is has been highly controversial. There was a study, and study's still going on. It's called the Women's Health Initiative, and looking at hormone replacement therapy in women. There's a lot out there. That's a decision you make. I personally do hormone replacement therapy, but I say to my patients, that is my personal choice. You decide what's best for you. And I will tell you that in many cases, again, going back to the economic impact, not all hormone replacement therapy is reimbursable by insurance. So I know that I'm paying out of pocket for it. Okay. So, but there is information from the Menopause Society. Two of our physicians are actually pursuing the specialty designation through the Menopause Society. And then I've given you the statement from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Again, that's for you. Definitely know your health history. And if you decide to pursue it, you want to be on top of what's going on. Again, I have a strong family history of cardiac issues. I watch my blood pressure. I make sure I get my checkups, and certainly mammograms, routine self breast exams. But just consider if that's the right thing for you, given all the factors that go into your overall health. Okay, Miranda. Okay, so sleep practices, and these are easier said than done. And I think for a lot of us, we have to get to a point of how we have our bedrooms set up or wherever it is you sleep. Uh, I use night shift mode on my phone. So at 10 p.m., it goes to that yellow tone as opposed to the blue tone. And then at 7 a.m., it comes back up to what I see during the day. Again, that blue light, and we all now know this, it's interfering with melatonin production. So you want to switch to night shift mode. I've had to get to, and it was definitely a place to get to. I put the phone on my bedside table and turn it over so I don't see a light come on, or that I'm not alerted by that. So definitely that. I work on this with a lot of patients. I find people leave the TV on at night and they just fall asleep with the TV on. And unfortunately, your brain is hearing what is being played. And so it's interfering with the ability to sleep. And that's one of the things when I work, particularly with children, with my young girls who are TikTokers or YouTubers and my boys who are gamers, is that having devices that are on constantly is interfering with their sleep and also their blood pressure. Okay. A cool bedroom. I don't think I have to tell anybody on this call that a cooler temperature is better. I love fans. I'm probably, since we're going to be, I saw the forecast in the 90s early next week, bringing the fan back to put my makeup on, to stand beside me while I put my makeup on, which I did at one point in time. But keeping everything cool is ideal. And also just the white noise of a fan is sometimes helpful to sleep. There are, and on the subject of white noise or relaxation, there are songs, and Miranda, I will send those to you. There's a couple that have actually been tested of just like melodies to reduce anxiety. And there's several that you can play for either 10 minutes or 10 hours so that it's playing overnight, but it's to calm, it's not to interfere with brain activity. You can track night sweats for some people. certain foods, certain meals will interfere or cause night sweats, spicy, for example. But just track what it is, and then also take a look at what you're sleeping in, and then certainly sheets. I feel like I am kind of my own Consumer Reports investigator on sheets because I've looked for sheets and I found a couple that I like over the years. And price doesn't always mean that they're better. I discovered that the hard way. Other things, you know, I love um, I love my Chardonnay in the evening when I get home, but you sometimes have to cut it off earlier because your liver is going to be trying to process alcohol, and then it's going to actually interfere, as well as going to interfere with brain activity. So, and as we get older, we just don't process alcohol like we once did. And women don't process alcohol as well as men anyway. So you'll see on my resources list, I've given you a resource for my favorite mocktail that is not full of sugar. It's the Ritual brand, and I've put that on a slide. Okay, Miranda. Okay, so if you were to see me professionally, made an appointment, and I'm happy to meet with anybody. You don't have to have a physician at University Medical Center to meet with me. Uh, what I would talk to you about and what I do myself is number one, we've got to prioritize protein. And that is so key because, as I said earlier, as we age, we naturally lose lean muscle mass. And, or if you've lost weight, my patients who are on the GLP 1s and 2s like Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, Mounjaro, Trulicity, any of those, if they're losing weight, muscle mass tends to go first. So we've got to offset that. My preference is closer to 30 grams of protein at a meal. And I definitely want it included in snacks. We are the generation that in the weight loss craze of the 80s, the diet foods of the early 90s, we snacked on pretzels and 100-calorie snack packs and wondered why we were always hungry. And that's why when you add protein in, it's going to help um, have a feeling of fullness or satiety with that meal or snack. And again, it offsets muscle loss. So trying to target that, and it doesn't have to be meat, fish, poultry. Beans are an excellent source of protein. I love black beans, chickpeas, you name it. Okay, so and eggs, the price and availability of eggs is coming back down, so that's a wonderful protein source. And then certainly the food industry is targeting the needs of people on medications such as the Ozempics and similar drugs. So you're seeing a lot of protein-rich snacks hitting the market, um, protein shakes, etc., that are coming out that we can use just to help kind of with this um, as we kind of advance across the aging cycle, can help us as well. Another thing that I try to focus on, again, for myself, but also for patients, it's what I call energy conservation. You know, when we were younger, or when you were, say, a young parent, you may have been trying to make sure everybody had a meal, everybody had something on your way. Because I see Miranda has two very active boys, and they're always doing sports. And so the way that you plan meals at that stage of life is going to be different at this stage. Those I have some friends that are on this call. They know that I did cookbooks um, in the late 90s, early 2000s, Southern Living, Cooking Light, Weight Watchers brand cookbooks. I love to cook. I enjoy it. I've got every appliance possible. But today, the way that I plan meals is different. And I save my long times in the kitchen for when I have bulks of time, typically on the weekend. And I'll show you some examples of meals that I do that are real simple. Okay. And I've given you some resources for how to make mealtime easier. Hydration is key. We've got to stay hydrated as we age. The desire, thirst mechanism begins to decrease. So you have to be intentional with your fluid intake. I personally like larger bottles of water if you don't use a refillable because I don't have to remember to refill it. And that's just me. Uh, fiber, fiber is going to help with those GI problems. Uh, Ideally, we get that through food, but I'm giving you a couple of supplements that a colleague likes and some patients of mine have liked. So I tend to like I've got a photo that you'll see a flaxseed meal that has to be refrigerated, or even the Metamucil brand instead of the beverage or that you reconstitute with water. They actually have some fiber kind of cookies, crisp that you can use, and but you've got to get that in. And again, it's going to help with some of the GI problems. Um, Already discussed alcohol. Salt intake, the trade-off for the convenience items that you'll see listed, the the trade-off for any time that you use a convenience product or pick up takeout or what have you, you're going to get more salt. Okay. And then supplements, as I said, just kind of think about what you're willing to commit to financially and time wise. And I mentioned biotin. For me personally, as a 54-year-old, excuse me, I just turned 54. My personal goals for this summer is to find a weight training plan that works for me. A colleague mentioned to me this morning that she has free weights that she uses. I'm asking myself, do I have the discipline to do that at home? Or do I need to look for something, not maybe a full gym? I'm not a gym person, but maybe where I can just go in and do some basic weight training. And then also flexibility. Flexibility, my big goal is to not be dependent on other people down the road. And I live alone. So I have to be, you know, I have to take care of myself. And I've had a couple of falls that were for other issues, but I tell my patients one fall that where you hit your head or possibly break a hip, that will be life altering, if not life ending. So flexibility is key. And again, we tend to just not move as much as we once did. And then also, you've got all the musculoskeletal changes that are occurring as we age. Okay. So for me, and maybe come back to me, Miranda, in August and tell me how successful. Like you can check to see how successful I was. Next slide. Okay. So what are some resources? So locally, and this is actually coming up this Saturday. Okay. This Lifeline Solutions is a counseling group in town, and they are right at the end of University Boulevard after you cross over the Lurleen uh, intersection. Lifeline Solutions has a program for perimenopausal and menopausal women. It's called Claiming the Change. And they have a retreat this Saturday at their center. And that is from 2 to 4. It's only $10. And we're hoping to partner together in the future. I actually got an email late last night from one of the instructors who's also a UA faculty member. But Lifeline Solutions, not just this retreat, but almost daily, pretty much every day, they have some type of wellness activity that you can join in on. It may be breathing techniques for anxiety reduction. It could be yoga that you can follow along with. But definitely, reach out to them. LifelineSolutionsLLC.com is the web address. And you can go to their wellness tab and you'll see an entire calendar for the month of activities they have going on. Um, Podcast, there's a lot out there. And I think if you started searching for things on any of your socials, you'll see you're going to get flooded with all the influencers in this space right now. One of our physicians who's pursuing the menopause credentialing certification, it one that she really likes is called Ovary Active Podcast. Okay, and it's on any Spotify, Apple, anywhere you listen to a podcast. Two friends of mine have the Happy Eating Podcast. That's Carolyn Williams and Briarly Horton, and they look at all types of topics. Last week, they released a podcast on your skin from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And so looking at skin changes and recommendations. And they are also, their podcast is anywhere that you would find one. The menopause diet plan is actually from two dietitians, well respected in my field. And it's actually not a diet plan per se. I think we were all raised again in the 80s and 90s on and early 2000s on diet regimens. And I think we've proven those don't work long term. But the menopause diet plan, which they have both in book form, they also have an Instagram channel that you can watch, goes through the changes that are happening at this stage of life and how to address that. Okay. And then recently, you have likely seen this individual. Her name's Tamsin Fadal. She is a broadcast journalist who did research on menopause, the years leading up to it, perimenopause, postmenopausal years, and even how different cultures address this change in life, and which I think is fantastic. I hope that for those of you who have daughters, that their years when they hit this stage of life is different than what we faced without having answers to start with until we started digging. Because, I think there's still this concept, and I have wonderful male colleagues and friends who say, oh, well, it's just anger issues. I'm like, no, it's far more than that, far more than that. Okay. So, and those mood swings, and yes, I saw that comment. Yeah, the mood swings do affect those relationships. And it's kind of learning how to, maybe how to deal with people differently, or when to maybe close the office door, or whatever works best for you. I have one colleague who's a great friend, who said that sometimes when she gets home, she pulls into her driveway and said, I'm just going to sit here for a few minutes before I walk in. Another colleague said that she sometimes will just tell her husband, we don't need to talk right now. I'll talk to you in a little bit. Okay. So just know that most people think that's what menopause is. And there's, of course, so much more. But yeah, sometimes we can be a little bit quicker to anger and, kind of cause some problems. I mentioned the Kara Care app. Okay. Next slide. Okay. And then if you were to meet with me, this is a starting point, is that I follow the American Diabetes Association's kind of what they advocate for. It's not a special diet for somebody with diabetes. It's for everybody to start with. Your activity level may cause variations in what works for you or your food preferences. But this is sounds very basic, but this is where I start. And next slide, Miranda. This is literally how I eat. These are my plate. This is my these are my dinner plates. And truly, to make one half the meal vegetable, um, one half the meal, one half the plate vegetable, one quarter of the plate a carbohydrate, and one quarter of the plate a protein. That's that is 90% of the time what I'm doing. Now, do I believe, as my coworkers and I were talking this morning, that there is, I love the bacon cheeseburger at Avenue Pub, and I plan to have it coming up. So, there's always space for something else. This is just a good guide, and I've given you. There's a free meal planning tool from the American Diabetes Association that lets you create breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they have recipes too, and you can customize your own kind of plan if you kind of run out of ideas. But it's simple, but it's a place to start. And if you want someone to work for you or work with you, I'm happy to do that. I also have a colleague who meets with patients at our Northport clinic. Next slide. Okay. And then I have what I call I don't have the bandwidth for this tonight dinners. And these are just quick cook or heat meals. And there's even Dollar General, one of a UA alum created recipes using only items at Dollar General. And they're called Better For You recipes. And there's the link. She was a fabulous student in the nutrition department, and partners with Dollar General even today. Also, there's a lot of places to pick up food. Bradley's Market in Town Center has frozen meals at the back of the store. The Fresh Market on has their Little Big Meals every week for $25, and then Thursday specials. Those who've heard me speak before have heard me promote UA Athletics Catering Department on Mondays, which they'll restart next month. They have full multi-course meals, $20 for two people, $40 for four people. And usually it's enough food to have leftovers or use in the future, freeze and use in the future. Also, Publix has ready to cook meals. Next slide, Miranda. And then other area businesses, locally owned businesses, Mark's Mart in downtown Northport, and I confirmed with them, you can call ahead, get any of their lunch specials for that day, and pick it up after work. They'll put it in the cooler for you, okay? They also do grilled and smoked meats, usually on the weekends. You do need to call ahead and order those. North River Cattle Company, the butcher shop that's locally owned, they will do specials time to time where they cook. They told me this morning they plan to have a low country boil coming up sometime soon. So just watch their socials for those specials. One of my favorites, I love Manna Grocery. I love their deli. And you can actually call ahead, order something off the lunch menu or one of their special entrees, and then they'll put it in the cooler for you. You pick it up after work. That's one of my go-tos because I can't necessarily get over to Manna during the workday, but I can go by and pick it up after work. Deli Press, Jason's Deli, you can just get a side of protein, a side of chicken, shrimp when they have it, to go, a piece of salmon. I always tell people, look to the salad bar at Jason's as ingredients to put a meal together, not necessarily to build a salad. Everything's cut, ready to go, it's fresh, and you don't have to do any work when you get home other than maybe put things in a skillet. Next slide. And I have to, a friend, I sent this presentation to a friend who's on this call and last night, and she said I had to laugh at the product she put up. And I'm like, well, you need to know that that's out there because most of us have not, we've been doing the same thing for 20, 30 years. There's now whole body deodorant. And this brand is one that they have that you can use in all parts of the body. So safe for private areas. The Ritual brand of alcohol substitute, the tequila mixed with a little lime LaCroix and some fresh lime is my personal favorite. And then the flaxseed meal, which again has to go in the refrigerator upon when it's opened. And then those fiber cookies that I mentioned. Next slide, Miranda. Okay. And on our last few minutes, I have to say, again, we're still buying from that aisle. Panty liners are fantastic. Okay. Again, those leaks can lead to that laugh can just produce a little bit of a problem due to incontinence. Your makeup may need to change for those who do wear makeup. I mean, I had some photos that had to be done for professional reasons, and the makeup artist said, and we're not going to use the foundation you've been using. And I was like, oh, that's because I have lines. Okay, so something creamier. And then you may notice with hormonal changes, hair on the face. And so you can dermaplane to remove that hair at home or go to a professional. But you will, even as recently as just a couple months ago, my good friend, Gwen Sheffield, I noticed that she was waxing my chin. And I said, oh, so we're there now. And she said, yeah, we're there. We're there. Your hair pattern growth has changed. Okay. Next slide. I think that's the end, Miranda. Okay. So hopefully this gives you some ideas. I am happy to meet with people in my office as a patient. And again, you don't have to have a physician at UMC. I get physician records and your last office visit note and just get an outside referral in. But I'm happy to help you. I think this is a stage of life. There's always the what to expect when expecting, how to be a new mom for those who had children biologically or those who adopted, how to, help your family adjust. But this is a stage of life that hasn't been really talked about until the past couple of years. And I think the demand of almost over 200 people registering for this, and that's just this employer alone, says that there is a problem and it's time that we begin addressing it. Okay. So I think I'm literally right at time, Miranda.